We've come to you today with a special broadcast in which we will be inviting you to have a look, to peep into the coven from which the witchcraft that has presented itself as 1999 Constitution, as the unitary Constitution of Nigeria, is being orchestrated, so that we can better understand the nature of the monster we are up against. We've been talking about the Constitution. Most people in Nigeria now realize that the Constitution of Nigeria, even the international community, including the UN, now realize that the Constitution of Nigeria, the unitary Constitution of Nigeria, is the source of all of the problems we have been trying to resolve. Whether it's the killings going on, or the insecurity, gross insecurity everywhere, or the corruption that has grown in leaps and bounds over the years, or the impunity that is staring us in the face, or the decayed infrastructure, everything, the mediocrity that is being celebrated above excellence, everything that has brought Nigeria to where it is, that is now wobbling to some kind of catastrophic collapse, coming from that Constitution. The purpose of this broadcast today is to take you to the foundations of what became the kind of Constitution we have now. Those foundations dating back to pre-1914. I have with me here a document that predates 1914. I'm inviting us to see, we talked about, I'm sure some of you might recollect the video in which we talked about breaking into the British archives to get at the documents they were concealing from us, they had concealed from our fathers, about what they put together in the foundations of Nigeria. Quite apart from what we finally see in black and white in our Constitution, there are motives. We recall that the British were on a colonial conquest. And again, we're looking at the map here. We realize that the British came from the Atlantic waterfront in the 1860s, using a combination of guile and brutal force to get hold of the territories of southern Nigeria. They had all kinds of trading treaties, which later matured into protection treaties, and all of that. So they had southern Nigeria, and they went on, trying to go to the hinterland, to go all the way up to the balance of Nigeria to the north. But we also recall that in 1804, by jihad, the Fulani had arrived into the space we now call Sokoto, and overrun the Hausa territories there, establishing their caliphate. So the portion we see in yellow here came under the control of these Fulani jihadists that came from the Futajalon mountain area into with the territory we now call Nigeria from that part. Therefore, having come in and having conquered the Hausa territory, the Fulani were also pushing southwards to get towards the Atlantic Ocean. At the time, the British were pushing northwards to get the balance of Nigeria. The reason we are making this special broadcast is to prepare us for what is coming ahead. The collapse of the 1999 Constitution will throw up situations that might confuse people, except they know where the foundations of that 1999 Constitution are. The document I have with me here covers the period preceding the 1914. So we could see exactly what the British put in place, because eventually they had to go into some kind of joint venture with the caliphate that was coming from the north, while they were coming from the Atlantic waterfront. They met in the Lorry Benue axis, the place you call the Middle Belt now, and after a brief period of skirmishes, they came to some new reasoning to say, let us, like two robbery gangs against a common target, why not we consolidate what we have? You bring what you have from the north, I bring what I have from the south, we put it together, and it becomes a common venture from which we share the profits in a certain ratio. Of course, the British was the senior partner in that sharing, because they were bringing gun into the arena to help the ones who were already on on their own conquest mission. That joint venture between the British and the Fulani was what culminated into the amalgamation of 1914. And some of the documents that we got from the archives show that there was a clear intention of a master-servant union, in which the Caliphate North was described as the poor but well-behaved husband or suitor that was being wedded in marriage with the southern lady of means. We said it to you before, you may be doubting it, but you are going to find out if you research. The oil of Nigeria was sold for about 50 years before Olobiri was declared in 1957. If anybody wants to find out some more about that, go and find out whether there's a place called Shell Camp in Owerri. Find out what Shell was doing in that place for 42 years before going to Port Harcourt in 1960. Everything you were told about Nigeria is first a lie until you find the shreds of truth that may be in it. Now, those provisions of the Constitution, those things that now result in the kind of corruption we have seen, in the kinds of impunity we have seen, in the kinds of mediocrity that is ruling over excellence, in the kinds of falsehood that is prevailing over truth in all things in Nigeria. We want to show you where they're coming from. And from that beginning of the joint venture between the Fulani and their British sponsors, these things were carefully considered and built into our foundation. And we're going to take you through a few of them. The document is is titled The Amalgamation of Nigeria, a documentary record, being a reprint of the report by Sir F.D. Lugard on the amalgamation of northern and southern Nigeria administration 1912 to 1919. The final phase of the amalgamation process took place between 1912 and 1914 after the southern territories had been merged together in 1906. The different treaties, Oil Rivers Colony, Lagos Colony, and everything in between. There was the Shekiri Treaty, there was all kinds of treaty with all kinds, but they merged all those things in 1906 to become the protectorate and the colonial protectorate of southern Nigeria. And then in the north, they also merged everything they had to call it the protectorate of northern Nigeria. Now, the question of making one country, one political union, out of all of those, out of these two, was what happened in 19 to now merge that southern protectorate to the northern protectorate. Because the administrative cost of managing the north was something the northern the finances they were able to raise there could not cope with. And so in putting that Nigeria together, the British knew exactly where the assets were, and that was why they described southern Nigeria as a southern lady of means being put in marriage to the poor but well-behaved northern suitor. That well-behaved was simply a question of being willing to adopt the overlordship, to accept the British, who were also feudalists. Both of them were feudalists, but the British had more guns and could actually conquer them. But because the British also wanted to use them to hold the entire territory together, the joint venture between them was then one in which the British had to put them in charge. What were the things that had to be done to put these people who were obviously backward from the peoples of the South and most of Middle Belt, whom the British, throughout this document, described as the natives? Let us note the words, because we're going to hear the word natives, throughout what I'll be reading out. This document was put together by those who were reviewing what Lugard had put together after the amalgamation, over which he presided. I mean, he presided over Nigeria from 1914 to 1919. That's like 5 years after the amalgamation. It was the week that Lugard was retiring and handing over to somebody. that this report was looking at all of what he had wrought and looking at specifics, some of those principles that have been introduced that will now form part of the foundations of that Nigeria that will be based on the amalgamation he looked at constructed or contrived. Now, we hear about the Nigerian system all the time when people say, oh, Niger, because it's just a euphemism for things that are being done upside down. You know, if we recall a few years back, when somebody does something that is abnormal, people just dismiss it as the way Nigerians do their things. Now, let me shock you. The first point to take from here, listen to this. Sir Frederick has earned the notorious distinction of being the originator of a system of government, the product of his exuberant imagination, entitled the Nigerian system. That system has, in the pregnant words of ex-Judge Stoker, been described as a setback to a condition of things resembling the barbarous ages. The peoples of Nigeria were at various levels of civilization. The Yoruba was an ancient civilization, the Igbo, the Nok, all of them were here. Now, they had a clear sense of right and wrong. They knew who the thief was and how to punish him. They knew who the men of truth were in the community. The Igbo had the Ozo, and they had their ways of managing their affairs. But this system that Lugard brought here was described as a setback to condition of things that resembles barbarous ages. We had gone far past all those things that were now brought first back to our space so that we can begin to do things up. It was just a system that put things upside down. Upside down. Everything you knew, if you thought the truth would be encouraged and celebrated in a society, it put falsehood that will be rewarded and truth to be punished. If you thought hard work and excellence was to be encouraged and rewarded, no, it was laziness and mediocrity. You don't everything that we held sacrosanct were almost rendered abominable by what Lugard brought. If you want to understand how that Nigerian system, what that Nigerian system means and how it's being operated, again, we read from another portion. It reads this way. That's the contents of the Nigerian system. The three basic principles necessary for the successful working of the Nigerian system are ignorance, fear, and military terrorism. That is to say, the perpetuation of the natives in a state of idolized ignorance, the impregnation of their minds with an instinctive dread of the white man, and reverential awe for the fetish of white prestige, and the paralyzation of their wills by the spectacle of military terrorism hanging over their heads like a sword of Damocles. Now, what this is simply saying is that this Nigerian system required ignorance at the base of it. Ignorance is being orchestrated and promoted to the scale where they become institutions of their own, where they become the standard that you need to succeed. Does anybody still wonder why Muhammad Buhari, with no verifiable school certificate, will become a major general in the army of Nigeria and become head of state and then president, with the multitude of other people with a lot better qualification? That is for ignorance. It is that ignorance that grew, that institutionalization of ignorance that grew all the way to where we now have quota system, in which the worst of the candidates are preferred ahead of the best of the candidates, just to accommodate the working of that system. And everything we say, I want you to have this map at the back of your mind, that this joint venture is to bring the people in this yellow part, the caliphate, the Fulani, to become masters over people who were the people they describe as natives, the South and the Middle Belt, people who were already ahead of them in all kinds of things, so that they could prevail over them. So with ignorance, you put down, what should have happened. Then fear is a direct product of that ignorance. That fear is something deliberately being orchestrated, as a part of keeping the system. That is part of how Nigeria has been sustained from the beginning. We see the DSS today coming out to tell the people who are talking about the right to self-determination, who are challenging the fraudulent constitution that has made them slaves in their lands. The DSS coming to say, oh, no, you can't say so. That anybody who says so, we're going to, I don't know who they're talking to. This is something that predates 1914. That fear is part of what the system, the foundations, what was incorporated into the foundation as how to keep that union of Nigeria according to the imagination of the British. Then then follows the military terrorism. Of course, it is by that military terrorism that you begin to understand that all the terrors, we remember that Abacha told us that any such thing as, defying the force of coercion, the monopoly of force by the government. If there's a terrorist group or some kind of insurgency that lasts more than 24 hours, that the government, like these bandits we're talking about now, Abacha says that if banditry or terror or such things as we now grapple with in Nigeria lasts more than 24 hours, that the government has a hand in it, that the government is a part of how it's happening. Now, we see here that ignorance and fear and military terrorism are the trinity of institutions that sustains that Nigerian project. And so the government is the terror. That is what we are being told here in this document. Abacha confirmed it without intending. I'm sure Abacha never saw this document, but he was telling us as one who was in the saddle that government is in a position to know. And we have seen if Gumi knows where the terrorists are, the government knows where Gumi is, but the government forces cannot find the terrorists. Government is the terror. We've seen Southern Kaduna. We've seen what's happening all over the place with no single apprehension of the multitudes of people who have been going in the name of herdsmen, killing people all over the place. So we are showing you that before 1914, it was the intention of those who put Nigeria together, the British and their caliphate friends, their Sokoto friends, the Fulani, to have government be the terror in the background. So whether it's armed robbery, you suffer. Go and check the robbery gang. You will find one police chief that is part of how it's happening, which is why they are not. The day they kill policemen, you will suddenly see, they'll find out who the robbery gang is. So government is the terror. The reason you cannot run to government and find relief when you are under siege, whether it's kidnappers that are laying the siege or the robbers or the bandits, government is the terror. It didn't start yesterday, but it's now been brought to manifestation on a scale that everybody needs to know. And part of what we have to make our people know is that these are the pillars of the provisions that came into the constitution we have on the table now. It didn't start in 1999, it didn't start in 1979, it didn't start in 1963, it didn't even start in 1960. It goes all the way back to 1914.